Well, let's talk a little bit about the VOR DME approach into Lancaster before we actually fly it. Now, there's a couple of ways you could go. Now, if we are coming from the north, from Bloomsburg area, we would probably end up flying to Wyland and flying this arc in. Or if we would come from the south, you would go to Jonger instead. So a legitimate question you might ask is, how do I get on the arc? How do I start, if you will? Well, if you have a GPS or you're getting vectored, that's certainly one way that you could start on this approach. The other way is you could fly to the VOR and then fly outbound. And that is not unusual to do as well. Now, just because there isn't a lot of distance coming this way, it's only from the 296 radial to the 270 radial. Instead of flying this arc for the approach, I'm going to fly the other one. Gives you a little bit more time to see what's going on. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to fly down to the Lancaster VOR, fly out on the 215. I'm going to hang a right, and I'm going to fly this DME arc, this one, and then fly in. Now, a couple of things, before we've talked about the idea of you turn 10, you twist 10. What we haven't really talked about is, how do I get onto the arc? When do I start turning? So if I'm coming down this radial, this 215 radial, when do I start turning to get onto this arc? Well, generally speaking, normally when you're about a half mile away, unless you're going at some crazy speed. So this is a turn of about 90 degrees. If you do some math, 90 degrees, that is about how many seconds? So 180 degrees is a minute. So 90 degrees is half a minute, 30 seconds. If I'm going at, say, 120 knots, that is 2 miles per minute. So then I would want to start to turn pretty early in that case. But if I'm going something a little bit less, such as 90 knots, which would be more typical, then I could turn a little bit later. Right? So if I was doing 120 knots, I should probably start my turn about a mile out. But if I am going a little bit less, normally mile to a half mile. So what am I going to do? I'm going to fly out this radial. I'm going to turn right 90 degrees. So my heading is going to be 90 degrees from this, or 305. So my heading will be 305. I'm going to fly, and then I'm going to twist my CDI so that it says 225. And I'm going to fly until the needle centers. And then I'm going to turn right another 10 degrees, and then twist another 10 degrees, etc., etc. And then when I approach the 270, I'm going to start to turn inbound. Now, if it was an ILS approach, they would have lead radials. But since we don't have an ILS approach, you have to decide for yourself, when do I want to start to turn inbound? And that might be, say, 5 to 10 degrees. That's something that's going to depend on things like your approach speed. Okay, one other thing I want to say. You're not really going to fly this nice, pretty arc. You're going to fly a bunch of little segments going around this. And you're going to watch the DME and see that it stays at about 11. If it goes too high, you're going to turn an extra 10. if it goes less than 11, let's say it gets down to 10 and a half, then you're going to avoid a turn. You're just going to take out a turn to the right of 10 degrees until this thing gets back towards 11. And that is the way that you do wind corrections on a DME arc. So like I said before, I've never been asked to do one of these, and I don't know anybody that has, but they are kind of fun, and there are some skill building opportunities. So without further ado, let me go ahead and fly this. All right, so here I am. I'm actually just going to start at Lancaster. I'm going to fly to that VOR and fly out on the 216. Going to climb up to 2,500 feet and try to do this DME arc and fly this approach. So I'm climbing through 1600 here. Now what I've done is I've gone ahead and said that my waypoint on the number 2 GPS here is going to be that VOR that's on the field, actually, LRP. And that allows me to use the second VOR. I should say not the second VOR, but my second radio to measure my DME. And I have a little bit of an intercept here. I don't want to have a huge intercept because I have, in fact, only traveled 0.7 miles from that VOR. And if I get too crazy with the intercept, that thing is going to swing, and it's going to swing way out. Let me remind myself of where I'm heading for with my heading bug here. So I've got my altitude. I'm going to go ahead and drop my nose a little bit. Almost have my altitude, that is. I've got another 100 feet to go. All right, and there's that needle coming back. So I'm going to bring it around. Probably went a little bit extreme on my intercept, but I do have some time to fix it. I'm still only a little more than a mile from this VOR. Going to give it a little bit of an intercept. I can go ahead and level off. I'm above 2,500. Needle's starting to come back in. right about like so. .1 miles out, so I've got quite a ways to go still. A little bit of a correction. Now when I approach my arc, I can use some of these little red tabs, if you will, on my DG to help me out. Right? I can use those and say, all right, what's the story with those, right? So I know I want to go 90 degrees to the right, and I can see where that is. That's about 305. If I don't want to do my math, so I'm a mile away from my arc now. So I'm going to go ahead and fly just a little bit further, and then I'm going to start my turn. So it's going to be turn 10, twist 10. All right, so here I'm going to go ahead and start my turn. So because I'm going a little bit fast, it looks like I've slightly overshot, but not by too much. So I'm turning to a heading of 305, and I've changed my CDI to 225 from 215. I'm going to fly this until the CDI centers, And then I'm going to turn another 10 degrees. So a heading of 315. Going to go ahead and turn a little bit early. And my tolerances, I'm going to look for a tolerance of about half a mile. So unless this gets above 11.5, I'm going to stick with what I've got. And once again, I'm going to wait for this thing to center on the 235 radial. Now I have to remember where I'm getting off of this train, right? I'm getting off of this train at the 270 radial. Starting to bring that needle in. As soon as the needle centers, I'm going to turn another 10 and twist another 10. I'm going to go ahead and turn just a little bit extra because I'm getting close to my tolerance of half a mile. So I'm going to turn 10, twist 10 again. By the way, in case you're wondering, I realized that I've misread my approach plate, and I thought it said 2200, not 2500, so I'm slowly working my way back up there. So I apologize for that. All right, so in my next 10 degrees, I will be coming up on the 265 radial. That'll be my next thing to twist, and that will give me 5 degrees to lead my entry onto this approach. All right, so I'm starting to bring that in. Okay, so now I'm going to twist in 265. I'm actually going to twist in, 265 here. Or try. And once this centers, I'm going to go start turning in toward my 090 heading. And I'm going to go ahead and dial that in on my number 1 radio, my 090. There it comes, starting to come in. Give it just a little bit more, and then I'm going to start bringing it in. All right, so right about here, turning to my 090. And I'm heading down to 1,800 feet. Give myself a little bit of an intercept. Turn just a smidge too early. So 4.4 miles. Still have 300 feet to lose here. $150 feet. $50 feet. It's my 1800. I'm going to level off. Got that needle centered now. Less than 3 miles till I can descend again. One mile. .3 miles. Two. There we go. Chopping and dropping. All the way down to 820. $600. $2.9 to missed. Another 350 to go on our altitude. All right, I'm going to start Leveling off a little bit. About 50 foot above my decision altitude. Actually 100 feet, but I'm rounding up. Holding this altitude. 1.8 more to mist. .3 to my mist. .1. Half a mile. All right, now I can see my runway. So I'm going to go ahead and begin my approach. .300 feet above the runway still. All right, so it looks like we made it. So that's how you fly a DME arc. So I hope you enjoyed this, and we'll see you in our next video.